Rev up your engines!
Some guy says, Scotty, how dangerous is it to fart in a smart car? Well, it depends. They're so small, usually there's only one person in it, so you don't care. They always say a man doesn't mind the smell of his own fart, so you're not really going to care. But if there's somebody else in the car with you, they're not going to like it because they're very, very tiny inside. And you might want to watch my video, why it's dumb to buy a smart car. In the United States, it's kind of a dumb thing to do. In Europe, where they have tiny little parking spaces and they don't drive that much, they're okay. And they sold a few of them there. But I mean, the last year that they sold smart cars in the United States, I think they sold like 1,600 of them. Nobody wants to buy them here anymore. They're just too small. I drove around in one once when I was working on it, and I took it on a highway because he was having a shaking problem at highway speeds. Boy, when those big 18-wheelers went by, it scared the heck out of me. I wouldn't want to drive one of those things around on the highway, I'll tell you that. Archer Abshire, is it safe to drive with a bent frame? Pretty good question. Of course, it depends on how bent is the frame. I actually had a customer years ago. It was the funniest thing I've ever seen. He had a big Toyota 4Runner. It was white. It looked like an iceberg. And he had it T-boned. And the entire vehicle was bent in. And he got like 80 pounds of Bondo. I'm not kidding. And he covered up the big cracking parts, but you could still tell the whole thing was almost bent in half. But it wasn't bent enough to make the wheels track wrong. So it still went straight down the road, even though you were driving this 4Runner that looked like somebody bent it in half. The tires were still going straight. So if you find it still tracks good down the road and the frame doesn't have a thing where it's actually cracking in half and you can see that it's going to split wide open, but most vehicles these days have unibodies anyway, so the whole vehicle is basically the frame. If the tires still track good forwards, you can often drive them a long time. Like I say, that guy's still driving that thing 5 years later. It was an embarrassment to look at, but it still worked. Sean Mark Jamina says, Scotty, what are your thoughts on the 1991 MX-5? Are they good cars? Thank you, and God bless America. Those were fun little cars for driving around. You have to make sure, if you're going to buy one, that it's a standard transmission, because the automatic transmissions were absolute garbage. They cost a fortune to fix and they had no power. But the standard transmissions were very fun cars to drive around in. They didn't have hardly any problems at all. If you find a good one, it's the 91. Hey, I've seen people buy those things for $1,500, $2,000 and drive them for years and years and years and years. They're pretty solid built little cars. They're not real fast, but they're fun to drive around in. And for a little rag top, you have the convertible top down and then throw the top up when it's raining. They're decent cars, especially if you got the hard top option. If somebody still has it, we can put the hard top on in the winter, because the soft tops are kind of crappy when it's snow and ice and stuff. Claret 206 says, I got an 03 Lexus ES 300. When I use heating or cooling, the flaps adjusting cold and hot get confused and make noise. This is a faulty temperature sensor. How can I fix it? If they make a little bit of noise and it stops, live with it. Because that's a 16-year-old Lexus. They're well-built cars. There's no arguing that. They're really well made. The main problem is, as they age, they can be very complex to fix when stuff like that breaks. The only way anybody can even work on that thing, they have to have a dealer-level scan tool to analyze the HVAC system. HVAC stands for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. It's all tied in together, and it's all run by computers. So if you get little wacky noises, but then they go away, my advice, live with it. And I found in my own customers' cars with those, a lot of times if you have it on a low speed, low blower speed, you'll hear noises, but if you put it on a higher speed, you won't. So just run the fan faster, and a lot of times you won't hear the noise anymore. That's what I do with my wife's. Well, we got a 2002 ES 300, and it worked perfectly fine, but if you have it in that low fan speeding, a lot of times you'll hear little noises. Just turn it up higher so you don't hear them. D2 the Air says, I got a 2011 Pathfinder. It won't start when the temperature gets cold. Cranks like crazy, but it won't fire. Hook up a jumper, it starts right up. Any insight on this? Okay, first, just replace the battery. As nutty as it sounds, once in a while, a weak battery will do exactly that. It will crank the engine, but it won't start it. Now, that's not a common problem, but I've seen that 6 or 7 times in my life for working on cars for 51 years. I'd had customers that the engine would crank, but it wouldn't start. And when I jumped it, it started right up. Modern cars need a lot of power to run the ignition system, the fuel system, the anti-theft system, and to crank the engine. And if you're just jumping it, it starts right up. First thing I'd say, just replace your battery. 99% of the time, that'll fix it. Now, if it's not that, then you got a wiring problem. Something's wrong with your battery terminals feeding power out, and it's not getting right. And when you put clamps on the top of them, the power feeds. Then you need new battery terminals to fix it. But most of the time, it's actually just a bad battery. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.